to make their bottom lines, they had to fire people, right? They had to lay people off, and they had to, while that was their way of looking out for themselves, was to cut expenses and other people. And so they could still live in their giant houses and do what they do.
Right.
And to a degree, they earned that. I'm not asking them to go homeless, but you have to understand the dynamics of it. But the players are the workers here. And this is really I don't know why. It's just because it's professional sports, and mostly because it's baseball. It's the only labor management dispute that I can think of that the general public seems to side more with the management than they do with the labor. In any other walk of life, it would appear that, the public is on the side of the worker and not the corporate, the big man. But
right. I think, Sweeney, the problem that I think the outside people and the fans see is they see Max Scherzer getting a $43 million a year contract, and he's in charge. He's one of the head of the players union. And I think that's why the owners say this. Why the fans are saying this guy's making $43 million. Why is he bitching about money? And actually, in this one, they're worried about the younger generation this time around.
Well, and but to that point, Max Scherzer is the one who should be in charge, because how much power does the union have if some kid who's just been out of the minor leagues for a month is the guy leading the charge,
right?
Or a veteran at the league minimum, anything like that. It doesn't do as much.
He has power, so he's using that power to benefit the whole league and benefit the union. I respect that, and I think people should understand why that is a respectable thing. Right. It would be very easy for Max Scherzer or Garrett Cole to say, "Listen, I got mine, guys. Wake me up, okay? I made $30 million last year. If I miss a couple of months' paycheck, I'm not going to miss my mortgage. I'll hang out with my wife and kids, and you guys, figure it out and then call me when you're ready." It would be very easy for those guys to say that. It would be very responsible also for those guys to say that. They obviously have more at stake too, because the paychecks they're missing are very large paychecks.
Right. No doubt.
Comes time. But to think about raising the minimum, because here's a key component that I think we miss. Okay. Not all players are created equal, because, as you said, you got Scherzer and Cole making what they make, and you got minor leaguers making, or first-year players making minimum. But they all started in the same place. They all broke into the major leagues making the league minimum. I mean, you've got some guys who made signing bonuses, things like that, based on draft or wherever they signed. But for the most part, they all know what it was like to come up through the minor leagues making very little money, and then trying to crack the big league roster, stay on the big league roster, and know the work that it takes to compete and stay there. So they were all created equal in a sense before separating themselves at the big league. The owners were not all created equal, and probably never will be. First of all, they are all, the whole millionaires versus billionaires thing is a tired, stale cliche for me, because it's not. Every player isn't a millionaire, but every owner is pretty close to a billionaire, right?
No doubt.
And they are not created equal, and probably never will be, because the owners of the Marlins and the Rays can't compete with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers, just revenue streams. And they never will be. They're never going to be that equal. So that's they're claiming that they have some solidarity of their own too, but trust me, there is a battle between within the ownership group, because they don't all have the same interests.
Right.
I'm making this long-winded point, but it's actually kind of boring, but I hope you understand this.
It's better than listening to me. It's fine.
It's a lesson in economics, because really the key battle here is that these two sides have, while they're playing in the same game and claim to have the same interests, they have differing interests, because the players operate in a free market and a capitalist economy. Get the most money you can get, right? And if it comes at the expense of another player, because there's a finite number of jobs in the big leagues based on the roster space, well, okay, I am going to work and do my best to win this job. And if I win this job, it means somebody else isn't going to have this job. I'm taking this roster spot. Somebody else doesn't get this. I am, it's survival of the fittest, or you want to do, it's a competition to get this roster spot and then get the money associated with it. The owners are a collective. It's more socialist. I mean, they're in a co-op because they can't put each other out of business. They need each other to play. If you purchased an apartment in a co-op building, they wouldn't let you knock out everybody else's walls and evict the people next to you so you can have a bigger apartment. That's a little imperfect example, but the idea is still the same, that they can't put each other out of business. They have to figure out how to work together and share the money. The players are just saying, there's a job open and we're going to fight for it. One of us is going to win, and that's it. That's the way it's going to be. The Yankees and the Rays and the Dodgers and the Marlins, they all have different interests because they have to stay in business together. They can't just step on each other along the way.
I mean, the thing is, it's funny that you bring that up because you look at the Yankees and the Sox and you look at the Dodgers and the idea of how long you're able to hold on to a player, is a very big difference for them than the Pirates and the Royals and the Twins. They need to hold on to these players as long as they possibly can, or try to lock them up on an early contract like Wander Franco, stuff like that. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to compete and bid when it's time to do it. The Padres are showing us a little bit that a small market team is spending, because they are, but they're still not they're not even near the threshold of the other teams we mentioned.
No, but is it really necessary for everybody to be on equal footing? Where is it written that all 30 teams have to have an equal chance every year? They don't. Listen, if you go just in the last 10 years, the Royals went to back-to-back World Series. The Pirates were in the playoffs 3 years in a row with 90-plus win teams. The Orioles won a division not too long ago.
And the Rays are always good.
Yeah.
The Rays are always good. And the Marlins even had a really good year a couple of years ago when they had the expanded playoff.
Yeah, for some reason they're, you have these pockets, these windows where the Texas Rangers were in 2 World Series in a row. You have these opportunities, and if you either take advantage of them or you don't. Listen, the Mets have spent a fortune, been to 1 World Series in last however many years. The Yankees have spent a fortune, been to 1 World Series in the last dozen years. And there's always a lot of luck involved in actually making those extra jumps and winning those extra games. It's you got to give yourself a chance. Now, you'll have a shorter window and you have lesser room for mistakes. But that's really everything. I mean, nobody's complaining about the NFL model. The Patriots have ruined everybody for 20 years, or did ruin everybody for 20 years. Nobody cared. Nobody said this, we have to stop. Think about this. The rules in baseball have always changed because everyone's afraid of the Yankees or a big spender or something like that. The revenue sharing and a luxury tax were not even a consideration until the last Yankees dynasty. And everybody was afraid that, okay, the Yankees have won a bunch of World Series. They're going to re-sign all their stars like Jeter and Bernie Williams. They're poaching players from other teams now, like Mike Mussina from the Orioles and Jason Giambi from the A's. They're just going to run away. We got to do something to stop them. Well, does anybody do anything to stop the Patriots or the Lakers when they have dynasties? Nobody does anything in those sports. You let the sport happen. I'm sorry. It seems everything seems more reactive in baseball to you can't let this happen. Why? Why not? What's happening? Nobody's going to, the Yankees were going to lose eventually, and they did, even after signing all those guys. And they haven't had a dynasty since. And frankly, the way the sport is set up with multiple layers of playoffs and really good talent throughout the sport, I don't think you're having dynasties the next time the Yankees win a World Series, it's not going to be followed by 2 or 3 in a row. They proved that in 2009. It's the next dynasty isn't around the corner just because the Yankees think they can win a World Series, and it's not the end of the sport.
I always find it interesting, and I'm sorry, Bill.
Okay.
When I look at the Astros, right? Remember when they were at rock bottom? They were the worst team in baseball for a couple of years. I mean, they were just horrible. And the way, I mean, obviously, a little cheating in the background, but what they did and the way they did it with youth and young players, they went from the worst team in baseball, team that nobody wanted to watch or see, to becoming a perennial powerhouse. I mean, they're going to start losing players now, and they are. And that's
yes,
right.
and there's nothing wrong.
That's fine. But they went from bottom to top.
And they had a little bit of luck go along their way, and they tried to force their luck. It's
a little cheating, but
cheating. Hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
They've also lost. They've lost Garrett Cole. They've lost George Springer. Possibly losing Carlos Correa. Okay, the the pieces are coming apart. They had a window, and in 3 years from now, somebody say the system is broken because the Astros are in last place, or they say, listen, they had a 5-year run, a 6-year, whatever it was, where they were really good and had chances. That's just the cycle. Money buys you more opportunity in that, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. I just don't think there's anything wrong with the cyclical nature of some of this.
Yeah,
No,
what?
I agree with you.
A lot of people were, are even the players are talking about how some teams may tank and stuff like that. Derek Jeter became an owner, part owner of the Marlins. He basically did kind of what the Astros did. He cleaned house. He got all of the high money guys out, got all kids in, used his draft picks, built the team. That team's got a pretty good starting pitching right now.
Yeah.
And obviously things worked out, but it, changed. But that team is starting to build, right? From the ground up. It's going to take a couple of years, but I think as a player, you're kind of like, well, you know what? They're trying now. Yeah, they had a clean house, but they're trying. But then you look at the Pirates who have sucked for how many years? And that owner doesn't give a crap. That owner's making money whether the season happens or not. Well, maybe not. See, they're not going to get the money, but he's making money before he even opens up his doors because he's getting the extra money from the cap from the penalty. So he's
in a
making
beautiful
money no matter
ballpark
what.
too,
But
in a perfect ballpark.
Right, but I think the point I'm trying to raise is I know I think it's okay. Everybody killed Jeter when he got rid of everybody. All he was doing was what the Astros did. He got rid of everybody, and now he's starting to build his team like the Orioles are trying to do.
It's a really bad way of selling it, though, because they're doing what they're allowed to. They've basically discovered that listen, I could spend another $60 million, but guess what? I'm not winning with an extra $60 million because it's not the other teams, whether it's the Orioles trying to face up against the Yankees and the Red Sox, or whatever the Astros were doing, an extra X millions of dollars isn't going to do anything for my ability to compete. But if I break it all down and spend a couple of years accumulating talent, I can buy myself a window. That's a long-term play. But the problem is you're charging admission to games now. You are playing now and you're competing now. And the players on the field have a finite career and they're out there the players in the field try to win every day. Okay. You put whatever 9 guys you throw out there, they're trying to win. But if you're not putting the best lineup you're capable of out there, then you clearly are not trying to win. And this is something else that, this is where increased revenue sharing is probably the answer here, but that's an argument for the owners to figure it out amongst themselves and try to get those things going, because it really isn't fair to the players involved that they're trying to compete in a small window of a career. Now, listen, most careers only last 3 or 4 years, right? Well, if you're telling me, the Astros plan or the Orioles plan, it takes 3 years of losing. Well, you got a bunch of guys here who are just never going to, they're never going to get themselves out of this. They're going to be out of the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's when you're talking about competing, they're just simply not being honest when they're saying that they're trying to win, when their goal is to cut payroll down significantly so that they can eventually compete, because you're not trying to win that day,
right,
as you can. And that's that's not sports. And that's where something it's where a guy like Jeter didn't he never had that mindset. Even when some of the last teams he played on, the Yankees, were not very good. They somehow managed to get themselves to 80-something wins, but he would never concede that they weren't good enough to get into the playoffs, or to, if they made the playoffs, make a run, because all he saw was the game in front of him that day.
Right.
He's supposed to look at things differently from a business perspective, but he had such a famous mindset that I saw work out. I saw it play out every day for 13 years that I was there with him, where it didn't matter what was happening yesterday. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what was going to happen over the next week. There's a game right now, and I got an at-bat coming up right now. If I don't get a hit now, guess what? I got another at-bat coming up right after that. I'm going to focus on that. That was his mindset of winning right now. And And I think he kind of discovered how that's a little bit different when you're in charge, and you have to look at it from a business perspective.
14 team playoff. I'm sorry, I should say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.